Thursday. This is the get it done day. Get everything done before the weekend, right? So I'm going live a little bit early today because I have a meet the press thing going on in a little while at 10 a.m. So coming on early instead. Hey Jay, nice to see you. Hey Mike, how's it going, man? Um, Anyway, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about how do we teach our children about body boundaries. So that is a what's the language we can give them? Because I taught a class recently to a group of young teens, like 11 to 17 young women, and we were talking about body boundaries. Why is this so important? It gives them a language to talk about if something's happened to them, and a language to talk about um, to express their own boundaries, right? So when we talk about our body as our property, right, to a young kid, we can relate that to something that they understand, like their cell phone or their truck or something like that, right? And we say, okay, just as I can't take your truck without asking, right? Your friends can't just come and grab it. You don't want them to talk about it. You don't want them to talk about it. Um, uh, sorry, my friend Mike. I'm laughing because he said, "Let's see you go full Donald Trump on the media." Oh dear. Okay. Probably not yet. It's not quite my style, but we'll see. We'll work on it. Anyway, so teaching your kids this type of language, right, is the simplest way to allow them to talk about their own rights or their own boundaries, right? So if you're teaching them your body is your property, nobody gets to touch it without your permission, then they have a way to express that, right? They can say, sorry, this is my property, please don't touch me. And they will also understand why things that other people do to them are wrong, instead of having this vague sense of unease. Because I remember growing up, there were things that I felt like something was wrong, but I couldn't articulate how or why it was wrong, right? So it was very confusing for me. So when you give children this type of language, then it allows them to articulate what's wrong and to also be able to say, hey, no thanks. Don't touch me there. That's not, this is my property, right? It gives them a language to use it. It's a simple language. So when you're teaching a kid something like this, right, when you're teaching them about ownership, their property rights in their body, in their creations, and then the five elements of a good exchange, you are really setting them up to be successful in life, right? You're setting them up with a framework that will allow them to make, it will help them to make healthy decisions. It will help them to create good relationships, to become business people with integrity, because they will be able to really see exactly what those elements are. And it's simple enough for them to remember. It's not complicated for a kid. When I teach this to kids, I'll tell you what, they get it much faster than adults do. They understand it like that. I taught it to a group of like few little kids. When I first created the framework, it was just a drawing on a piece of paper. And I taught it to like this like 8-year-old and his 10-year-old sibling sitting there. And there was a few adults sitting there too, right? Their parents were there as well. And when I taught it to them, the kids got it and totally understood it way before the parents did. So, that's a thing that, when you teach kids this, believe me, their minds are clear and fresh, so they can understand it. They don't have all of the mental blocks that adults do towards understanding these type of concepts. There's a clarity to them in this, and they love that clarity because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for to understand how to be in the world. So definitely, if I'm going to create some materials to help teach this to children, because that's really my passion. That's really what I want to do. But when we use this language, we give kids a way to express boundaries. We give kids a way to express their rights, and we give them a conviction that they are right, that they can tell an adult no, right? They can tell an adult, don't touch me like that. See? Because how often do you think a kid might be in a situation? It might be someone that might be their teacher, it might be an uncle, it might be somebody in their circle, or even just a stranger, and they're having this type of interaction, you're not always going to be there as a parent. And so you need to give them the tools and the understanding to stand up for themselves. That's what's so critical. Hey, Duda. Hey there. Hey, Soza. Give them the tools to stand up for themselves, gives them the tools to articulate if something is right or wrong, even if it is to people they know, people in their own family, to adults, right? They have to have the language, they have to understand what the boundaries are for themselves, or they're not able to express that to others. And I'll bet you that if a kid can express that clearly to an adult who is behaving badly, then I think that that's going to be a shock enough to that adult to help them to click out of what they're doing, right? And if they know that that kid can go and articulate that to their parents or to the person who needs to hear about it, I think that's going to help that kid a lot to be able to protect themselves even when you're not there. Hey, Raphael, nice to see you. So that's what I want to talk about today, the importance of you teaching this code, this framework to your children, and how it will help them stand up for themselves, help them protect themselves, help them articulate when things are wrong, and it will help you to be able to articulate to them things in a much easier way as well. You'll be able to talk to them and you'll be able to explain things to them about why things are right or wrong. You'll have a language, right? You'll be able to say, well, you can't push Susie because you can't touch her property. Her body is her property. So pushing her, that's not okay. Just like, you don't want someone to push you. You can't take her truck. That's her truck, right? And at the same point, you'll have to understand that maybe little Johnny doesn't want to share his truck, and that's okay. He doesn't have to share his truck. It's his property, right? Instead of like a lot of parents do, they push their kid and they force their kid and they say, well, you're not being nice and you have to share your truck, right? Well, maybe they don't have to share their truck. That's their property. If they're not feeling like sharing, that's okay. Okay. They're not wrong for that. And if we don't force them to share when they don't want to, then they might be more happy to share, right? If we can frame it in a different way, right? So when I frame it, I say, if you're not violating one of these rings, you are being moral. You might not be a very nice person. You might not be a real joy to live around. Okay. You could be a grumpy old hermit living in their house, not talking to anybody, but you're not being immoral. Okay. That's the distinction they need to understand. Hey, Autumn, good to see you. So, however, if you want to live a life of connection, if you want to have more joy, if you want to, um, expound your happiness and your joy and your connection, then there's an extra layer of stuff that you do, right? And that comes from love, treating people kindly, sharing, generosity, patience, all of those things. That's the extra that we do that creates beauty and joy in our life. But to be a moral person, you just have to follow those few principles. That's it. You don't have to, there's nothing else you got to do, right? You just have to not violate those principles to be moral. So it gives you a really easy way to teach your kids the difference between what is, just the basics, just don't violate these, versus what is the icing on the cake, right? What makes life that bit sweeter. Okay. So that gives you, it just creates such a clear distinction. When I was teaching this to some young people at the Oakland Youth Development Center, the teachers there were super grateful for it, because they realized, they said, this gives us the language to explain some things to these teens that we couldn't explain before, right? We couldn't explain to them, like, the teens weren't allowed to wear certain things when they came to the center, or they were trying to tell them, don't wear these things when you go to a job interview, or you don't get these, if you get these types of tattoos, then people are going to assume certain things about you. And they didn't have a way to explain it where the kids didn't feel like they were being attacked like as a bad person, right? They felt like when they were telling the kids, you can't wear that type of skirt, you can't wear that type of, piercings, or, have these tattoos or smoke or whatever it is, right? The kids felt like they were being attacked as a bad person. And but this gave them the language to explain it to them and say, no, only these few things are bad. Only these. If you're violating somebody's body, somebody's creation, you're, breaching the deal, these things are bad. If you're violating these things, creating undue pressure, right? Manipulation. But the reason that you do these other things, the reason that you dress a certain way when you go to a job interview, the reason that we don't allow certain things in this space, this is a space we've created. This is part of our agreement, your agreement with us. You get to come and use these facilities, but you have to abide by these rules. And it's not a moral issue, right? This is just an agreement. This is the nature of the agreement, right? And also, they were able to explain to people to these kids why you have to dress a certain way to go to a job interview. You're not a bad person if you're dressing, in goth or whatever, right? But you're going to put yourself in a situation where people are going to assume certain things about you, right? So that's how they were able to take it out, these types of conversations out of the way, which would make that kid feel like they're being bad somehow, or being shamed, or being punished, right? Instead, show them, no, it's not actually a moral issue. This is just simply an issue of culture, right? These are the norms and standards in this industry. It's not moral. This is the norm. In another culture, in another place, there would have a different norm. You could dress in a totally different way, right? I mean, just imagine going into work, and I've done this, right? You go into work in San Francisco versus going into work in New York or Washington, D.C., right? Completely different style of dress. You show up in Washington, D.C., in your sweatpants and your t-shirt to work, right? You're going to get booted out of the office and told to go home and dress properly. But in San Francisco, that's the norm. You show up in a suit and everybody looks at you like, what's wrong with you, right? So just, it's obviously not a moral issue. It's really just an issue of the culture of the people that you are trying to work with. So what I love about this framework, and what the teachers who use it love about it, is that it gives them that language, that way to express it to the young people, to the teenagers, to their children, in a way that doesn't make them feel bad, gives them clarity and understanding. So that's it. I got to run because I got Meet the Media at 10. I hope you guys are going to have an amazing, amazing day, and try using this with kids and young people. Every time I've taught it, they love it. I get really good reactions from it. So I am excited to do more of that. That's what makes me happy. Okay. You guys have a beautiful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.